Alright guys, if you haven't already done so, go ahead and take out your notes. Green on the left, notes on the right. Green on the left, notes on the right. Okay, as you're doing that, today we're going to start our new chapter on chapter 6 on solving, it's on equations and inequalities, but our first lesson is on solving one-step addition and subtraction equations. So one-step equations, all we're worried about today is addition and subtraction. Alright, so here we go. Have quite a few words, so be ready to go. Here we are. Alright, our very first word, guys, is equation. Everyone? Okay, so here's what the book says. An equation is a mathematical sentence that contains an equal sign stating that two quantities are equal. A mathematical sentence that contains an equal sign stating that two quantities are equal. Alright, and so here's an example. You could write in your box 3 plus 4 is equal to 6 plus 1. Alright, and what that's really saying is that it's like a balance on both sides. Both sides of the equal sign. They stay balanced. They are equivalent to each other, or equal. They simplify to the same number. Alright, and the next word is solution, everyone. Alright, so the book says it's a replacement value for the variable in an open sentence. A value for the variable that makes an equation true. Okay, so if you have something like x plus 2 equals 6, then 4 would be the solution. Okay, the x would be equal to 4. Okay, our next phrase is equivalent equations. Everyone? Alright, so the book says this is two or more equations with the same solution. Alright, so for example, x plus 3 is equal to 8, and 9 equals x plus 4. If you notice in both of them, right, they have the same solution. X being 5, it worked for both of them. Alright, we'll talk about balance when I get back. Our next phrase is subtraction property of equality. Everyone? Okay, so the book says if you subtract the same number from each side of an equation, the two sides remain equal. If you subtract the same number, no matter what it is, from each side of the equation, the two sides will remain equal. Alright, so if you have something like 5 equals m, then this is kind of weird, but it says 5 minus 2 would be the same as m minus 2. Because you're subtracting 2 from both sides of the equal sign. Okay, and then our next, and I believe our last phrase, is addition property of equality. Everyone? Okay, so the book says if you add the same number to each side of an equation, the two sides remain equal. So if you add the same number to each side of an equation, the two sides remain equal. So it's just like the subtraction property of equality, but it's talking about addition. So on this one, right, if you have something like 6 equals y, then 6 plus 1 would be equal to y plus 1, just because you're adding 1 to both sides of the equal sign. You didn't get that down. 6 equals y. Then 6 plus 1 equals y plus 1. Alright, so a lot of vocab words to start the chapter out with. So here we go. You can go ahead, put that away, grab your book, and turn to page 440. 440. Okay, so on 440, it's one of those times that I always joke around about, knowing that you guys probably like this time, and that is just go ahead and put your pencils down. I just want you to watch this very first one, okay? And I'll let you write it down as soon as I'm done, but just go ahead and put your pencils down and just watch, all right? I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to do number 2 on page 440. Okay, number 2. It says solve each equation, check your solution. So for number 2, we have 7 equals y plus 2. Okay. Now, listen. I mean, if you look at that, I'm sure almost all of you will know that y, I mean, let's face it, right? Y is 5, because 5 plus 2 equals 7. So it's not about the solution, it's about the process, because these are gonna slowly get harder as this chapter goes along. So we're kind of getting warmed up here. All right, so I'm just going to go through this. So the whole idea, our whole goal, it's kind of like a puzzle. Our whole goal is actually just to get y by itself. All right, they always say that it's to isolate the variable. All right, so to isolate the variable, or to get the y by itself, you need to find it first. All right, now I know that sounds kind of funny, but you need to find it, and then what we're going to do is we're going to box that variable in. Okay, for a couple of different reasons, but for the main reason is because we get to see where that is according to the equal sign. In this case, it's on the right side, so that is the side we're going to start on. Okay, right next to it is an addition of 2. 2 is being added to y. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the inverse operation, which is the opposite. In this case, it's the additive inverse, and it's kind of going back to our vocab. I'm going to go ahead, first of all, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to go ahead and subtract 2. Now, going back to our vocab, remember, to be able to keep both sides of the equal sign the same or equal, whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. All right, so that would be, of course, subtraction property of equality. So I'm going to go ahead. I subtracted 2 from this side. Notice I put the minus 2 right underneath. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other side, right underneath the 7. I draw my line. Anytime you do the inverse, it actually cancels out. So what that allows us to do is just bring the boxed variable down with the equal sign. And now we just have the nice simple problem of 7 minus 2. So our solution is 5, or y equals 5. Okay. So go ahead and I'll just grab your pencil. It should only take you about 15 to 20 seconds to get that down. Go ahead and do that now. Okay, so here's what we're going to do next. The problem right next to it, number 3. Okay, so on problem number 3, I'm going to go ahead and complete it over here. Problem number 3 is negative 7 equals c minus 6. All right, so what you're going to see here is I'm going to go through the same steps, but the steps are going to help us on this one a little bit more. Okay, this isn't quite, some of us may know what the answer is, but this isn't quite as easy as the first one. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead. Step 1. All right, step 1 is find the variable and box it in. Find the variable and box it in. Okay, in this case, the variable, the c, is on the right side of the equal sign. All right, so step 2 is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to look at the number that's on that same side as the variable, which is in this case a 6, or remember, it's minus 6. And I'm going to go ahead and we can write this down. I'm going to do we'll just write down the word inverse, which means opposite. Okay, if you want to put the word opposite, you can. So because this is minus 6, I'm going to go ahead and add 6. Oops. It'd be nice if I put 6 instead of 7. I'm going to add 6. Okay. So because it's subtraction of 6 from the C, I'm going to go ahead and add 6. Do the inverse. Okay. Now, step 3 is I'm going to do the same thing to the other side of the equal sign. I'm going to go ahead and add 6 here. Okay, because it's a one-step equation, all we have to do now is pretty much I'll just write solve. We have to just finish our problem. And when we do that, that allows us to just cross out where we did the inverse. We bring our C down. You don't need the box on there. Our equal sign. And then, of course, here's our problem. This is a little more challenging. Hopefully, we're getting the hang of integers. If not, those of you that are still struggling, like we've talked about, use your T-chart if you need to. Okay. For the rest of us, negative 7 plus 6 would give us negative 1. Okay. So step 1, box in your variable. Step 2, find the number that's next to the boxed in variable. Find out, of course, what's happening to it. In this case, it was subtraction, and then I do the inverse, the opposite. I add. So since this is subtraction of 6, I'm going to add 6. Step 3 is do the same thing to the other side. And then after that, step 4 is solve. So the inverse part cancels each other out. We end up with C equals, and then, of course, we just go ahead and solve that other side of the equation. So it's, like I said before, C equals negative 1. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to let you guys try one out. Go ahead and try out problem number on, actually, you're going to need to flip the page a couple times. Go to page 443. Try out problem number 20. I'll give you some time. Go. Alright, if you haven't finished, put your finishing touches on it. Again, guys, if you finish early and you feel good with it while everyone else is finishing, go ahead and work ahead a little bit if you feel good with one-step equations. Okay, 30 seconds. Okay, go ahead and turn to your neighbor and share your full answer with the variable and the equal sign. Alright, so 30 seconds. Go. Okay. All right, so here we go. Just where you can check your work. Number 20 on page 443 is -1 equals q minus 8. So negative 1 equals q minus 8. All right, so here we go. You should have, of course, step 1, boxed in your variable. Okay. Step 2, if I look up here, do the inverse. So this is kind of like the last one. It's subtraction of 8. So I'm going to go ahead and add 8. Step 3, of course, is, look in here, just do it to the other side. Same thing, I'm going to add 8 on this side of the equal sign. And then the last thing is solve. So remember, it's just wherever you do the inverse, they just cancel out. Negative 8 plus 8 is 0. It's kind of like 0 pair we talked about a long time ago. We have our q. Bring down our equal sign, and then we have negative 1 plus 8 is a positive 7. All right, so hopefully that's what you guys got. Make the corrections if you didn't. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're actually going to work on some word problems using something called a bar diagram. So I'm going to show you guys the bar diagram. I know we've done bar diagrams before. We've talked about them, especially when it came to like sale price, and but this bar diagram with a one-step equation is going to be a little bit different. All right, same kind of idea, but a little different. So here's what I want you guys to do: is you actually get to put down your pencils, take a rest, but remember, make sure your eyes are up here and you're just watching. Take it in, think about it, because we're going to take notes in just a second. All right, so going back to page 440. All right, so go ahead and flip to 440 if you're not there. Okay, and then let's go ahead and look at number 4. It's about the Wright brothers. Okay, making the first airplanes or the first flights. All right, so here we go. It says, Orville and Wilbur Wright made the first airplane flight in 1903. Wilbur's flight was 364 feet. This was 120 feet longer than Orville's flight. Then it turns around and says, write an equation to represent the flight. Use a bar diagram if needed. And yes, we are going to use the bar diagram. I want to introduce it to you guys. It says, then, and this is really important because there's a second part, then solve to find the length of Orville's flight. All right, so here is what we have. Okay, I'm going to go ahead, kind of separate all these here. All right, so problem number 4. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to start with the whole reason why it's called a bar diagram, because it's just like a candy bar, right? It's a rectangle. Okay, and what you need to know is that, especially with just a one-step equation, it is going to have 3 different factors to it. All right, so just as a starter, all right. So what it's going to have is kind of what you're looking for is the longest side, or the total. So when I reread this, it says Wilbur's flight was 364 feet. This, meaning Wilbur's flight, was 120 feet longer than Orville's flight. Okay, so Wilbur's flight obviously is the longest. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, and this top here, from here to here, the whole top, because it's the longest, that's going to be 364 feet. Okay, so what I'm going to do then is I'm going to go ahead and switch red pins, because that one's obviously dying. All right, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is, and I'm going to read the rest of it. It says this was, again, this being the 364 feet, was 120 feet longer than Orville's. All right, so this is Wilbur's. It's the longest. Wilbur's flight. Okay, and then Orville's flight, of course, because it says that Wilbur's flight's longer, Orville's is obviously shorter. So let's say that the distance of this bar, they have a little shorter side, so we go to the bottom, and that's going to be the shorter part. So Wilbur's flight, 364 feet, this 364 feet, was 120 feet longer than Orville's. So let's say this is Orville's flight. Okay. This up here is 120 feet longer than this. That means that this little extra part right here is exactly what that just said. It is 120 feet difference than Wilbur's, because Wilbur's is 120 feet longer than Orville. So here's Orville's, here's Wilbur's. You have to, of course, put the Orville's with the extra 120 feet to be able to equal Wilbur's. Okay? So if we go and we go ahead and write this, here's what you do. You know that Orville's, whatever it is, okay, we'll just say it's the distance of the flight. We'll say d for distance. This and this together is going to equal that. Well, obviously, if we say together, we're talking d plus 120 equals 364. Okay? That is our first answer. So what I'm going to now do is I'll rewrite it for us here, where I don't cross out our first answer. And now it just says, remember, it says, then solve to find the length of Orville's flight. So I'm going to go ahead and just go through my steps. Step 1, box in the variable. Step 2, I'm going to go ahead and do the inverse. So since this is plus 20 on this side, I'm going to go ahead and subtract 120. Sorry, 120. So on the side with the d, remember, side of the equal sign. And then whatever we do to one side, to keep it equal, we have to do it to the other. So this cancels out. We have d for the distance, meaning the distance of Orville's flight. And here we go. 4 minus 0 is 4. 6 minus 2 is 4. 3 minus 1 is 2. And guys, remember, because it's a word problem, we need words. So 244 what? So reread the question. It says solved. It's not really a question, just as a task. Solve to find the length of Orville's flight. It's the length. And of course, if you take a look at everything in the story, they're all measured in feet. So 244 feet is the second answer. Okay. So I know I did a lot of talking, but hopefully this next one will go a little faster. All right. So let's go ahead and let's do problem. Fix the paper here. Problem number 7. All right, on page 441. So problem number 7, 441. All right. If you read the directions, use a bar diagram to solve arithmetically. It says then use an equation to solve algebraically. So basically, guys, it's what we just did. All right. So number 7. Okay, it says last week Tiffany practiced her bassoon a total of 7 hours. This was 2 hours more than she practiced the previous week. How many hours did Tiffany practice the previous week? So here we go. Step 1. All right, we're going to go ahead and build the bar. Okay. Now remember, step 2 is you're going to look for, you might have to reread it, use some reading comprehension skills, but you need to look for the longest. Okay. The longest factor in this question. So here we go. Last week, Tiffany practiced her bassoon a total of 7 hours. Okay? This, meaning the 7 hours, was 2 hours more than she practiced the previous week. So 7 hours, it sounds like, is the total. So I'm going to, of course, the longest goes on top. All right? And that's our 7 hours. Okay? And if I'm going to, I might want to put, what is 7 hours? This is her... last week's practice. Okay. So 7 hours last week, that represents the total. Okay. Now, step 3, we'll take a little bit of thinking, but of course we need to know the two factors that go along with to make up the 7 hours. If 7 hours is the total, so let's see. It says this was, again, 7 hours is this. 7 hours was 2 hours more than she practiced the previous week. So remember, the other factor here is the previous week Okay, and so meaning in how many hours. So maybe this is like h for hours. And then remember, it says 7 hours was 2 hours. This whole thing is 2 hours more than this. So kind of like Wilbur's 120 feet, this is 2 hours. So step 4, remember, the bottom makes up the top. So in this case, the h plus the 2 hours, so h plus 2 is equal to the top, which is 7. All right, a little smaller one there. All right. If you want to, for your notes, go ahead and put, right, one of the sides is going to be the whole top, and one of the sides of the equation is going to be the bottom. Okay, so the h plus 2 is equal to the 7. So here we go. Step 5. Step 5 is solve. So we're just going to go through the steps we were talking about before. So here we go. Box center variable, it's on the left side. I have plus 2 here, so we do the opposite, minus 2. I subtract 2, of course, from the other side as well. And that cancels. We end up with h equals 7 minus 2 is 5. And guys, I know you probably knew h was equal to 5 as soon as you saw it, but you still need to show your work. So h is equal to 5. And then, of course, guys, don't forget, we can call it step 6 in this case. If it's a word problem, which this is, go ahead and put the units. Remember, h was hours, because that's, of course, the length of time she was practicing. So 5, I put my units of hours. All right. Don't forget, all right, make sure you have both the equation written and the hours, because that's what it's asking for. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead. I know it takes a little bit of thinking time, a little bit of reading time. So I'll give you guys, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes to read, to do your bar diagram, to label everything, set up your equation. You'll need, that's all your work you're going to need for doing your homework tonight and when we correct tomorrow. So here's what I want you guys to do. Give you guys a few minutes. Go ahead and try out problem number 23 on page 443. Okay, page 443, number 23. All right, I'll give you guys a little bit of time. Go. Remember, if any of you guys finish early, make sure that you get going on the rest of your homework. Use your time wisely. Alright guys, try to put some finishing touches on it if you need to. Alright, 30 seconds. Go ahead and turn to your neighbor. Don't only share your answer, but share your diagram. See if you guys set up the diagram correctly. Check out your equation since that's part of your answer. And then, of course, check out your answer. Make sure you put the units on there, okay? So 30 seconds. Go ahead and turn to your neighbor and share. Go. Okay. Now, this one, if you were listening to my lesson very closely and looking at the notes that we wrote down with even the little words, it would have helped you out. This one's a little different. All right. It says, so on page 443, number 23, okay, little NBA basketball, it says, the Miami Heat scored 79 points. This was 13 points less than the Chicago Bulls. How many points did the Chicago Bulls score? All right, so here is what you would do. All right, just kind of following my steps here that I have here. I'm going to write it down here. Here we go. Step one was draw your bar. Make it a little skinnier this time. Give myself some extra room. Okay. Step two is remember, find the longest part. So if I reread that, the Heat scored 79 points. This was 13 points less. So 79 is not the total because it's 13 points less than the Bulls. Guys, the Bulls is who scored the most. It goes on top. So if I reread it, I ask myself, well, how much did the Bulls score? Well, that's the question. That's what we don't know. Maybe that, I don't know, let's just make it X. Right? Variables don't matter, right? But that is the longest one. It goes on top. That's the total. That's what it's being compared to, but we don't know what it is. So then it says, how many points did the Chicago Bulls score? We have to figure that out, but remember, down at the bottom, we know that 79 points, of course, was less than this one. So this is 79 points here. Remember, this is the Bulls score. This right here is the Heat. And it said that this right here is not equal to this, right? This right here, I should say, 79 is 13 points less. So 79 with that extra 13 would be the same as the Bulls. So here's the thing, right? Bottom is equal to the top. So if you were to, and this is totally fine, if you were to do this, because it doesn't give you any extra rules, but if you go with what I was teaching you, right, we've done step 1, step 2, step 3. Step 4, remember I said to go ahead and you put the top on one side and the bottom on the other. So the bottom added together, so 79 plus 13 is going to equal the top, which is X. That's our equation. Well, this one's a little different, right, because it's not really an equation, it's just solving a normal math problem is what it is. So that's what it is. Solve. Well, you can do it a couple different ways. You could stack them and add and carry. I'm thinking 80 plus 13 would be 93, but that's not 80, it's 79, one less. So if 80 plus 13 was 93, this of course would be 92. And in this case, it's points. Now listen, I'll be honest with you guys. The way the book has it, and that would be okay with me, but the way the book has it is this. It says the total, which is the X, and minus this 13 is going to equal 79. And if you look at this, it's almost just saying that the same way, just a different way. Sorry, same thing but a different way. So if you did it like this, you'd have your one-step equation. Add 13 to both sides. So you get x is equal, okay, I'll do the carrying, 12, 7, 8, 9, so 92 or 92 points. So either way works. All right, but the most important thing is the bar diagram. All right. All right, guys, the rest of the class period is yours. Go ahead and get to work. Make sure you ask questions if you have questions.